I will start our next story with a cartoon. It was published by the New York Times in 2014. The cartoon shows two men sitting inside a room. They're reading a newspaper. The headline says, India's Mars Mission. The room is called the Elite Space Club. On the outside, a farmer with a cow can be seen knocking on the door. He's wearing a shirt with India on it. Obviously, it is all sorts of problematic. But what else can you expect from the New York Times? And why am I telling you about this decade-old cartoon today? Because today is a historic day for India, despite all these racist cartoons, despite the low expectations, and despite the failures. India's space ambitions are only growing. Today, the Chandrayaan 3 mission lifted off. It was launched from the Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota.
Lift-off normal.
Here we have a majestic lift-off of LBM-3M4 rocket carrying India's prestigious Chandrayaan 3 spacecraft.
Chandrayaan 3 is developed by the Indian Space Research Organization, or the ISRO. India has spent around $75 million on this mission. It consists of a lander, a propulsion module, and a rover. The next stage is detachment. The rocket detaches in two stages. The first step is done. The satellite has already separated from the launch vehicle. That is done. Now, the Chandrayaan 3 will orbit the Earth. This will happen in stages. After that, it will enter the moon's orbit. Here, the lander will separate from the propulsion module, and finally, it will attempt to land on the moon. So, there is still some time for that lunar landing to take place, around 40 days. But if the mission succeeds, India will join an elite club. It will be one of only 4 countries to soft land on the moon. The other 3 are Russia, China, and the United States. The Chandrayaan 3 has big goals. It wants to soft land on the surface of the moon, and that too near the South Pole. If all goes well, we will be the first ones to land near the South Pole of the moon. So this is absolutely crucial for our space ambitions. You see, the South Pole of the moon is largely unexplored. This is the area of the moon that remains in shadow. It is also larger than the North Pole, so the chances of finding water here are higher. In 2008, Chandrayaan 1 was the first to discover water on the moon. This water was also found near the South Pole, although the landing did not happen there. This time, India wants to land there. It wants to explore this new terrain, make a significant new discovery. Of course, the risk is higher, but the hopes are higher still. And this is not the first time that India is attempting it. You may remember Chandrayaan 2, it was launched in the year 2019, but this mission was only a partial success. It had 2 parts, the orbiter and the rover. The orbiter continues to circle the moon even today, but the rover failed while trying to land near the South Pole. So this is our second attempt at that, and India has set itself some lofty goals. India's space program is only 60 years old. The ISRO was set up in the year 1962. India was still a young nation state then. It had pressing economic and military challenges, but that did not stop it from dreaming big. In 1963, India launched its first rocket into space. We were no match for the other world powers then. The US and then Soviet Union were far ahead of India. But in the last 6 decades, that story has changed. Remember that cartoon we started with? India is not outside that elite space club anymore. India is a part of it. This is a stunning example of self-sufficiency, or what we call Atmanirbhar Bharat. Plus, it was achieved at a fraction of the cost. In 2014, India reached the Mars. The mission cost around $74 million. Compare that to NASA. The cheapest moon mission costs around $1.2 billion. Even the Hollywood movie Gravity had a bigger budget than India's Mars mission. And this is now a case study in leadership courses, how to beat the odds while remaining cost effective. Not just that, India is also helping other countries. It is making space technology available to the rest of the world. And the moon mission is only the beginning. The next in line is the Gaganyaan, India's manned mission to space. ISRO is also planning an independent space station. Currently, there are only 2. The International Space Station, which is a joint project between a lot of countries, and then there is the Tiangong Space Station, which is controlled by China. Now, India wants to build its own, and that too by the year 2030. ISRO is also proposing to send an orbiter to Venus. Perhaps it's time for the New York Times to commission a new cartoon, one that is in sync with today's reality. If they do it, we promise to tell you about it, but don't hold your breath for it. One of the big highlights of this visit is the UPI, India's unified payment system. It's been introduced in France. Prime Minister Modi made the announcement himself. He said Indian tourists can now make payments in rupees in France.
फ्रांस में भारत के यूपीआई के उपयोग को लेकर भी समझौता हो गया है। साथियों, आने वाले दिनों में इसकी शुरुआत आईफेल टावर से की जाएगी। यानी अब भारतीय टूरिस्ट मोबाइल ऐप के जरिए आईफेल टावर में रुपये में भुगतान कर पाएगा।
It's a big deal. UPI is synonymous with digital payments in India. Since its launch, it has been a runaway success. And what is the UPI? It is India's payment system. It facilitates bank-to-bank transfers, mainly through QR codes. There are many payment apps which support UPI. The system is fast and reliable. Also, most payments are done for free. Around 330 Indian banks and 25 apps use and support UPI. From small tea stalls to grocery chains and shopping malls, everyone has a QR code. They have effectively replaced the cash register. The UPI facilitates a wide range of transactions, from transfers as small as 10 rupees to large sums running into tens of thousands of rupees. And so far it was limited to India, but now this platform is being shared with the world. It is being integrated with other platforms to enable cross-border transactions. In France, the UPI is being integrated with a system called Lyra. How will this work? Like, if you are signed up on UPI and you see a Lyra payment terminal, you'll be able to scan your phone and transact through UPI. No need for cash or a forex card. France has become the first European country to adopt the UPI, but this is not the first international player. Earlier this year, India struck a similar deal with Singapore. There, the UPI was integrated with Pay Now, again to facilitate cross-border transactions. So far, 10 countries and regions have signed up. We've already told you about Singapore. The UPI also works in the US, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and the UK. It is available to NRIs or non-resident Indians. They can use UPI to send money, so the technology is available, but in a limited capacity. In countries like Singapore, the UAE, Mauritius, Nepal and Bhutan, the UPI works better. These countries support UPI QR codes, so payments can be made by phones. The system will work on similar lines in France as well, which brings us to another point. Why are so many countries signing up? Because the impact of UPI has been tremendous and far-reaching. It has facilitated financial inclusion, made day-to-day transactions easier. Users don't feel the need to carry spare change or queue up outside ATMs for cash. Your UPI app takes care of everything. It was launched in 2016. Last year, the UPI moved $1 trillion in transactions. That's equal to 1/3 of India's GDP. As of March this year, 40% of all payments in India were digital, and this is no mean feat. The world has taken notice. Experts say India's model has inspired others. Countries like Brazil, they've taken a cue from UPI. In November 2020, Brazil launched its own platform. It is called Pix. It works just like the UPI. To make a payment, you scan a QR code. And in about 3 years, Pix has overtaken credit and debit cards. It is the most widely used payment method in Brazil, making up 30% of all payments in the country. So the UPI is showing the way to the world, and it has a long way to go. 7 years after it was launched, it has about 260 million users at home. That's only a fraction of India's population. There are more than 1.4 billion Indians today. As the UPI spreads overseas, it can expand its user base at home as well, and this will help India create a bigger payments network, one that can challenge the world's legacy payment systems. New Delhi is facing a rather difficult question. Should it keep buying Russian oil? Last year, the answer was easy. Oil had reached almost $120 per barrel, and Russia was giving us discounts. How much? Up to $30 per barrel. So buying from Russia was a no-brainer, but that's not the case anymore. And there are two reasons for that. One, the discounts are evaporating. From $30, it's now reached $4. Though when you buy millions of barrels, that's still a lot of money. And secondly, the threat of Western sanctions. You see, the G7 has imposed a cap on Russian oil, $60 per barrel. If you pay 60 or less, you're fine, you're safe from Western sanctions. But if you pay more than $60 per barrel, you're in trouble. The idea of this cap is to limit Russia's oil revenues. Until now, this was not really a problem. Russian oil was priced below the G7 cap. But on Wednesday, that changed. Russia's Ural grade oil crossed $60 per barrel, meaning it's over the price cap. So what can India do? Well, politically, there is not much to fear. Western nations have largely accepted India's position on Russia. But financially, it's a tough call. If you buy Russian oil above $60 a barrel, you lose access to a lot of things, like Western insurance services or Western shipping services. Now, these are big parts of the oil trading industry. We are talking about multi-million-dollar cargoes. They travel hundreds of kilometers through the open seas. It's a risky voyage. What if a ship meets an accident, or maybe there could be a theft or an explosion? In such cases, all parties would lose millions of dollars. So what do? They take out marine insurances. They will ensure that their losses are covered, a bit like your car insurance, just multiplied by thousands. And that's where the G7 holds an edge. Their companies, G7 companies, control around 90% of the maritime insurance market. 90%, 90. If you buy at $60, you get their services. And if you don't, then you have to opt for shady networks, the ones used by sanctioned countries like Iran or Venezuela. Needless to say, that's not ideal. So what can India do? There is a strategy that Russia is already using. First, they bill the oil at less than $60, so no sanctions. Then they bill separately for shipping services, not Western ones, but their own Russian fleets. And they can charge anywhere between $11 and $19 per barrel. It's pretty high though, almost double the normal shipping rate. If you want Russian discounts, this is your only option. And a lot of trade is already happening like this, through shady Russian tankers. The question is, should India keep doing it? The risks are higher, the discounts are falling, and the dependence is alarming. You see, before the war in Ukraine, Russia made up just 2% of India's oil imports. Now it is more than 45%. That sort of dependence is fine if you get excellent deals. But at $4 discounts, is it really worth it? Indian officials and refiners are struggling with this question. Their options are limited. You can't pay in dollars because of sanctions. You can't pay in rupees either because Russia already has $2 billion worth of Indian currency and they have nothing to buy with it. You also can't pay in the Chinese yuan. India's state-owned companies have been asked not to do so by the government. The private ones are not too keen either. Why? Because the Chinese currency is not fully convertible. There are a couple of deals happening, but it's not a feasible solution. So New Delhi needs to ask itself two questions. One, is this current system of payments adequate? The answer is no. Shady tankers and invoices are not a long-term solution, especially when it makes up 45% of your oil imports. So India needs a stable payment system. If not the ruble rather, then something else. And question number two is this. Is it time to look beyond Russian oil? And this is not about ethics or politics. They don't matter for ordinary people who are at the petrol pump. It's about strategy and finance. Should half of your oil imports be at the mercy of shaky payments and shipping? If the money is good, then fine. If not, India needs to look for backups, which is why the Russian discounts are so crucial. Many experts say India should ask for better deals, and why not? European demand for Russian oil is nil. Chinese demand has peaked. So India is clearly their biggest market. Take a look at this data from June. It shows the export of Russian Ural grade oil. Turkey bought 780,000 tons. China bought 1 million tons. Now look at how much India bought. 5 million tons. That sort of market power should come with certain benefits. So why hasn't it? Reports say because of bad bargaining. The state-owned companies make up 60% of India's imports. If they negotiate together, they can get better deals. Unfortunately, that is not happening. Only Indian Oil has struck a fixed volume deal. The rest are buying on tender basis. So the bottom line is this: if India is keen on buying from Russia, we need better systems in place, easier payments, safer shipments, and better discounts. I'm very happy to tell you what I'm about to tell you next. Cricket is making a big stride towards gender parity. The ICC has announced a major decision. The ICC is the International Cricket Council. They will now give the same prize money to men and women at global events. Basically, all your World Cups. Let me explain how that will work. Suppose India wins the men's T20 World Cup. They get $1 million in prize money. Now, suppose Australia wins the women's T20 World Cup. They too will get $1 million. So, no more disparity. And in case you're wondering, yes, until now, that was not the case. Let's look at T20 World Cups to see the difference. Last year, England won the men's tournament. How much did they get? $1.8 million for the men's tournament. This year, the Women's T20 World Cup was held. Australia won it. They got just $1 million, which is 44% less than what the men got. Same format, same number of overs, same organizers, just the prize money was different. The ICC says it wants to completely eliminate pay parity by 2030, meaning not just at global events, but at all events. You see, most cricket happens bilaterally. Maybe India goes to Australia or South Africa goes to Bangladesh. The ICC does not decide the prize money for these tournaments. That depends on each cricket board, which is why this latest decision does not mean mission accomplished. There is still a long way to go. Last year, the BCCI announced pay parity for its players. Both men and women now make the same kind of money. What about other cricket boards? New Zealand was actually the first one to do it. They announced pay parity in July 2022. Australia has also set ambitious targets, but no pay parity yet. And this is a story across sports. We have some numbers for you. The average male golfer earns around $1.25 million. And female golfers, just $48,000. Now, basketball. Since NBA is the pinnacle of basketball, let's look at their numbers. The male players make $5.3 million per season. The highest paid female player got just $220,000. And let's not even talk about the average. In baseball, the gap is even worse. Male players get around $4 million and female players just $6,000. Let me repeat that for you. $4 million versus $6,000. And finally, tennis. People say tennis has done better on gender parity. To some extent, yes. The Grand Slams offer the same prize money to winners, but that's just 4 tournaments. Elsewhere, pay parity is growing. Consider this year's Italian Open. The men's tournament had a total prize money of $8.5 million. The women had just $3.9 million. Overall, women tennis players make around 80% of what men make. How is this acceptable? It's the same sport, the same set of rules and stadiums, but the prize money is vastly different. And I'm not saying things have not improved in the last decades, but it's like a drop in the ocean. We are not going as fast as we should. And one reason for that is all this, the nonsensical opposition. You've probably heard some of this. The men's events generate more money, so they should be paid more. Here's another one. No one watches women's sports, so where will the money come from? Well, I have a couple of questions for these people. Question number 1, how much has the world invested in men's sports? And how much has it invested in women's sports? I'm talking about both time and money. The men's IPL started in the year 2008 and the women's IPL 2023, almost 14 years later. So naturally, the men's tournament will generate more money, not because it's more entertaining, not because women's IPL is boring, but because the men had a massive head start. People ignore this when they talk about revenue disparity. Men's events earn more because you've invested in them. Millions of dollars and decades of time. Do the same with women and you'll see the results. Now, question number 2. How many social and cultural constraints do male athletes face? Nowadays, none. Maybe your family will frown at first, but that's about it. Not the case with many women across the world. They have to battle their families, their societies, and their religions to do what they love. Just look at Afghanistan. The Taliban have banned all female sports. The cricket team has been disbanded. The football team is living in other countries. My point is this: men's sports have had a relatively easy trajectory. The women had a harder time. More hoops, more challenges, and more frowns. I know we can't change the past, but we need to understand that past to make a better future. It wasn't sporting quality that created this revenue and pay disparity. It was discrimination. It was because the world put more money and more effort into men's sports. And now let's talk about 10 seconds. It doesn't sound like a long enough duration, but a lot can happen in 10 seconds. Usain Bolt can win the 100-meter race at Olympics. It will take him exactly 9.58 seconds to win the gold medal. An average pro can solve the Rubik's Cube. People have done it in far lesser time and broken world records. But why am I telling you about this? Only to reiterate that 10 seconds is a long enough duration and it can change lives. It is also a sufficient time to grope someone, to sexually harass them. And for those who are assaulted in merely 10 seconds, it could feel like an eternity has passed. Italy agrees with this sentiment, and as we speak, it is outraged because their court feels otherwise. Last week, a 17-year-old girl testified in court. Last year, she was climbing a staircase in her school in Rome. That's when she felt someone put his hand inside her pants. He groped her from behind. Before lifting her up in the air, she turned around to see the perpetrator. She walked away. The man chased her. He said he was only joking. The physical contact lasted between 5 and 10 seconds. Do you know who the accused was? A 66-year-old janitor in her school. The young girl took him to court over this. She accused him of harassment. The judges believed the student, but they acquitted the accused. The court found him not guilty of groping the student. Do you know why? Because the judges said the incident lasted just about 10 seconds. So it was too fleeting to be considered a crime. Plus his actions were simply meant to be a quote-unquote clumsy joke. So for these judges, this was a brief comic interaction. Even saying this feels appalling. So it's obvious why people are fuming over this court ruling. Not just Italians, but the world over, people are angry. And this has sparked a viral trend on social media. People are posting videos of themselves, where a stopwatch runs for 10 seconds as they look into the camera and touch a sensitive part of their body to show just how long and uncomfortable such an experience can be. Because groping someone in an institution that is supposed to protect children is not funny. And to acquit someone on the basis of their timing is unacceptable, but this is not the first such incident or the first such judgment. Italian judges have passed similar problematic rulings in the past. In 2017, for instance, a judge cleared 2 men of rape. They said the victim was too masculine looking to be a target of attraction. In another case, a judge acquitted a man of sexual assault because a woman did not scream during the attack. In 2016, a court in Sicily ruled that a man was not guilty because he groped female colleagues out of humor. Is it just us who are tone deaf to this supposed humor? Or is it the judges? Seriously, what are they thinking? Is this the Wild West, where apparently sexual assault is not good enough to deserve conviction? And let me tell you this is a problem the world over. Let me show you some government data. In 2018, only 0.7% rapes in the US ended with conviction for the perpetrator. In 2020, the same happened for only 39% of rapes in India. In 2021, only 1.3% rape cases in the UK were prosecuted. Crimes against women have always been difficult to prove. But victims face a tougher battle in court. The shocking lack of sensitivity. In 2013, a 14-year-old girl's rapist was acquitted in India because she did not, quote-unquote, fight like a wild animal. Now, judges are not robots. They don't just operate devoid of opinion or emotion. But when their opinion is so controversial, why does it not get them in hot water? Maybe because victim blaming is deep-rooted in some societies. Despite legislative reform, rape myths and stereotypes drive decision-making, and this affects how people think, how judges think. So sometimes their opinion is not just uncalled for, it is downright humiliating. Like in 2014, when a Canadian judge asked a woman in a rape case why she couldn't, quote-unquote, keep her legs together. This is what a judge said. Such opinions can change the course of a victim's life. Globally, about 1 in 3 women have been subjected to sexual violence, yet the consequences overwhelmingly fall on the victims. Study after study says so. 33 to 65% women who have been assaulted develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. 82% develop anxiety. Between 13 and 51% become depressed, and 2 to 19% attempt suicide. Who is looking out for these victims? One doesn't blame a victim for provoking their murder. One looks at the evidence. So why is that not the case for victims of sexual assault? Misogyny does not even begin to explain what's happening in our courts. It seems like sexual assault has become the easiest of crimes. What do you think of when you hear the word Hollywood? Grand films, glitz and glamour, global stars making their way through the red carpet? Well, those red carpets have been rolled up and the stars will be seen on picket lines instead, because Hollywood is on strike. The Actors Union has decided to take their grievances to the streets. They joined the Writers Guild of America for a double blockbuster strike. This threatens to bring all movies and TV show shoots to their knees. But why has it come to this? What is behind these momentous strikes? Here's a report.
65,000. That's the number of actors who are going on strike. They are members of the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, or SAG-AFTRA for short. They join the 11,500 members of the Writers Guild of America who have been on strike since the first week of May. So that's almost 80,000 people who work for Hollywood going on strike. What does that mean?
If they go on strike, essentially all production in the US grinds to a halt, and a lot of it internationally, because any American or union member of the American guilds, which includes a lot of British actors, a lot of international actors, will be forbidden from working on studio and streamer projects. So that will basically stop the whole production machine of Hollywood in its tracks.
This is the biggest action against film and television studios in 63 years. The last time this happened was in 1960. It pits the studios like Walt Disney, Universal Pictures, Paramount and the like against the stars and writers of their offerings. And the reason is quite simple. Like always, this is about money.
We are the victims here. We are being victimized by a very greedy entity. I am shocked by the way the people that we have been in business with are treating us. I cannot believe it, quite frankly. How far apart we are on so many things. How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them. They stand on the wrong side of history at this very moment.
That was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, and she made a valid point. How is it that Hollywood studios have millions to pay their CEOs but can't afford to pay the people who actually make the TV shows and movies what they are? And we know the top actors rake in millions as well, but it isn't about them. What about the people working bit part roles, or the newcomers just starting out with any role they can get? Don't they deserve a living wage as they work their way to the top? Don't they deserve to be able to fight off crippling inflation? Apparently, the studios don't think so.
Not on the board of anything. I'm just a person who works as an actor, and I love getting a paycheck, and I love getting my residuals, and we need to bump up the residuals because what's happening now, because of all the streamers, we don't make as much. No one's making as much. The people who are controlling the studios are making like beyond, like it's disgusting how much they're making, okay? It's gross.
The studios refused to budge when it came to dealing with basic pay issues. But the actors are not having it. They have entered a staring contest with the multi-million-dollar studios, and it's a question of who blinks first. What's good for the actors is that it seems even the major stars have their backs. Yesterday, we mentioned the upcoming double blockbuster release of the Barbie movie and Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer as it's being called. Yesterday, the strike was called during the London premiere of Oppenheimer, and the actors walked off midway through the premiere in solidarity with the union.
Well, yeah, we wanted to come out and talk about it because we're really proud of it and we worked really hard on it, and we wanted to, everything was all set up, so we said, well, let's just do it, and then if they call a strike, we'll go home. If it's going to work at all, we have to be, part of it, and it's, I think, a very important time in these negotiations for both the writers and the actors to kind of set the ground rules for the future because, so much is changing so quickly.
The ground rules about the future he's talking about is the other issue being fought over. In a nutshell, it's about the role of artificial intelligence. Hollywood was already shaken up recently by the coming of streaming platforms. This upended traditional payment structures and affected actors' dues. But AI threatens to be an even bigger agent of chaos. Studios have already tried to incorporate it into movies, to use AI to generate an actor's younger self. And it seems they want to keep using the technology in the future, without paying the actor their fair dues. Reports say the studios want to use actor likenesses for free forever. Now, technology is bound to evolve and things will change, but all these sweeping changes to the industry should be addressed by all stakeholders together, not by studios trying to fleece actors and writers, not by offering them token solutions in a piecemeal fashion. The Screen Actors Guild president said it best.
You cannot change the business model as much as it has changed and not expect the contract to change too. We're not going to keep doing incremental changes on a contract that no longer honors what is happening right now with this business model that was foisted upon us. What are we doing? Moving around furniture on the Titanic? It's crazy. So the jig is up, AMPTP. We stand tall. You have to wake up and smell the coffee. We are labor and we stand tall and we demand respect and to be honored for our contribution. You share the wealth because you cannot exist without us. Thank you.
With stars adding their firepower to the strike, the question is, will the studio bosses finally listen?
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Japan. Its space agency's rocket engine exploded during a test. In Switzerland, an artist used mountain slopes as his canvas. He used chalk and charcoal to paint two giant children sketching. And in the United States, a sea otter tried to steal a surfboard from a surfer family. Also, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1933, all political parties in Germany were outlawed except the Nazi Party. This happened only 6 months after Adolf Hitler was appointed as Germany's new chancellor. This became a pivotal moment in Germany's transformation from a democracy to a dictatorship. We're leaving you with that. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Deutschland kommen und muss sagen.カウント終了します。